vampires in ARK? What the hell is going on? Is it gargoyles? How the hell did we get from dinosaurs roaming a Jurassic land to a Bram Stoker's invitation to Castlevania? If you're thinking, what the hell am I talking about? Well, Wildcard recently teased the first story map in almost 4 years, and that's right, 4, to be joining ARK Survival Ascended later this year, and with it, a seemingly new take on survival, introducing a range of yet-to-be-seen gameplay systems, character abilities, new ways to build, and the subject matter here, exotic creatures. Having spoke in depth with up-and-coming lore guru Nano Stal, who I'd highly recommend to go check out, we've pieced together what the new environment survival elements may be, how NPCs may take centre stage, how Helena is in ARK 2, and why we're now fighting vampires, and they really are vampires, and I'll tell you why. But first, real brief story recap if you don't know the lore, of which we covered in depth in our previous lore video, predicting a bunch of things that seem to be coming true. And that's, this new expansion pack is set straight after the events of Extinction, where our survivor has purged all element from the Earth, activating the Reseed protocol that calls down every ARK simulation orbiting the planet, and along with it, every survivor and creature inhabiting each ARK, and yes, that includes Rockwell, who we thought had been beaten on Aberration. On reseeding the Earth, Helena Walker, the game's protagonist whose footsteps we'd been travelling in up until this point, can finally bid us farewell after waiting around for us to kill the King Titan, and travel through space-time to the Genesis life vessel ship that's on course to repopulate a new planet, namely the planet named Arat. But why does Helena look like a pumped-up neon diagram? And how does she travel through space-time? Well, Helena, the Earth-inhabiting memory-filled clone version that we'd read note after note taking her travels through ARK, ended with Extinction in some mildly successful attempt to kill the King Titan, but on her deathbed was carried to the Tomb of Ascension by a loyal friend she travelled the ARKs with, ancient Chinese warrior Mei Yin Li, that allowed Helena to evolve into a new form of being with superhuman abilities, Homo Deus, and in this form allowed Helena to learn and understand how to prevent death itself, allowing people to respawn, literally making us the one who tries again, but also resurrecting an old companion of Mei Yin's, Diana Altaraz, previously a military pilot for the United Republics of Earth, whom Mei had met on Aberration and guided them both to the most important place on Earth that could save everyone. Because that United Republics of Earth, well, they were one of two factions that decided to make peace following war to save humankind, the URE setting out to make the ARKs we'd known up until this point, and the Terran Federation to make the Genesis colony ship to find the planet Arat, and fittingly so named their base for the ship's construction Arat Prime, with another well-known survivor working for the Terrans as a hacker, Santiago da Costa. And we'd later learn that both Diana and Santiago were living at the same time, with Diana discovering Santiago's attempts at hacking into the URE, and discovered just recently they fell in love, got jiggy, and had a daughter called Mika. But resurrecting and cloning people isn't a simple process, who'd have guessed that? And all of our game's protagonists, when being resurrected or cloned, would each wake up with either some memory of what happened in their previous life, or none at all. And that turned out to be the case for Diana, unaware she'd had a daughter with Santiago when waking up on Aberration, and maybe why she'd grow some affection for Mei Yin during their adventures there. It was this version of Diana who'd been resurrected by Helena, and guiding both her and Mei Yin led them to Ground Zero, Arat Prime. And why? To open the Super Luminal Link, the portal to bridge our world and the ever-travelling Genesis ship. The problem is, they weren't ready for what awaited them. Because at some point in time, owed to the element growing and corrupting the Earth, the world was forced into a tidal lock, halting its rotation and ceasing one side of the world to be exposed to sun, and that means any natural light source that included the location of Arat Prime. So humans kind of need sunlight, if you didn't know, giving us vitamin D, I need a bit of that, healthy bones, lowering blood pressure and preventing disease, and our Arat Prime inhabitants knew this. So seeing that technology had advanced well enough to make giant floating livable arks, monolithic space-travelling life vessels, and the ability to evolve into superhuman Homo Deus beings, it's an easy stretch to consider what remained of the Terran Federation left as the remaining lost colonists to decide to force their own evolution that could help them healthy and strong in permanent darkness. A tale as old as most, believed to be factual to some, the darkness-dwelling, super-evolved human beings has ever been depicted as vampires, strengthened by night with eternal life, but with new desires to remain alive, including the thirst for blood. And being cold-blooded vampires, almost every fictional depiction has tied them to 19th century Hyde Victorian Gothic architecture. Bram Stoker's Dracula, Interview with the Vampire, Nosferatu, to name a few. It's imprinted to us that's how vampires live.
Vampire.
Is it 1358 yet?
No.
Then off.
And so our evolved Terrans would slowly surround humankind's last hope with a Gothic fortress. And why? Because whilst their newfound evolution had granted new strength, to continue using this they'd need to remain in darkness, and the technologies surrounding the superluminal link could now jeopardize that. So fast forward to our trailer following Mei Yin's arrival to Arat Prime, who may possibly still be accompanied by Diana, otherwise out of frame or travelling elsewhere. And Mei encounters one of the Lost Colony, a true-to-nature vampire, with all of the abilities of one, and quite possibly including to infect and transform anything they bite, including, yes, Mei Yin. Bear with me on that one. Now, let's rewind that trailer a little more and witness Helena on the planet Arat talking about Mei Yin in the past tense. Firstly, how did Helena arrive on Arat? Remember us explaining that Helena had learnt the ability to resurrect? Well, it's entirely possible her HLNA creation, of which she transferred her consciousness to, hacked into Genesis to ensure a clone of hers would be available to respawn once arriving to Arat. And along with Santiago, his daughter Mika, and Uncle Bob, could retell the stories to other clone survivors and explain the events that happened. And what this does mean is that it's possible that Rockwell could also have been hacked into Genesis to be cloned too, but we know much more happened to Professor Edmund after Aberration landed on Earth, and is in fact teased in the same Lost Colony trailer. Featuring the vocal talents of Michelle Yeoh voicing Mei Yin, Madeline Madden voicing Helena, Aulihi Cravalo voicing Mika, and then Rockwell's obvious elements and glasses icons voiced by David Tennant, Diana's United Republics of Earth logo, and a yet-to-be-known Dracula-themed Lost Colonists logo. So fast forward to our survivors' journey to Arat Prime, hundreds of years after Mei Yin and Diana's ventured there to open the superluminal link that not only allowed Helena to travel to Genesis, but Rockwell too, as we know by our encounters with him and his quest to take over the ship in Part 1 and 2. But between Aberration's arrival during the Reseed Protocol and him portaling through to Genesis, all manner of creations could quite possibly have been left in his wake, including, yes, NPCs. Let's not forget Studio Wildcard planned for NPCs in ARK 2 and later mentioned they would drip feed ARK 2 gameplay systems into ARK Ascended as time ticked on. Now, recalling Rockwell's studies on almost humanoid forms nameless on Aberration, the corrupted survivors he makes on Genesis, the Lost Colony vampires we'll be encountering, and Diana's possible reforming of the URE, combined with whoever else landed down from any arcs during the Reseed Protocol, I believe it's an absolute guarantee we'll be running into actual NPCs during the expansion story. But what happened to Diana? What happened to Mei Yin? Well, in some nod to Anthomnia's prediction that Mei Yin, the Beast Queen, would become the final boss of Extinction, and witnessing Mei being bitten by a vampire during Mappa's wonderfully crafted anime cinematic, I'd be considering that Mei Yin could become the Beast Queen of the Lost Colony. And in fact, honor literature's first depiction of vampires, Carmilla, a vampiress with all of the strength of the Lost Colony combined with the badassery of a Chinese warrior, and now unable to travel to Genesis owed to her need for permanent night. Diana in turn could have either travelled through the superluminal link, died to Mei Yin, may even be a vampire herself, died to a Lost Colonist, or reformed the URE in need of your support to load up those silver bullets and get vampire slaying. And why? Because of the Reseed Protocol. With the Earth's rotation slowly back in business with all of the element purged, the Lost Colony obviously aren't too happy, because we know what happens to vampires in the sun, right? And all are now hell-bent on reversing or ceasing the Reseed Protocol before it's too late for them. And that's where a new type of survival begins, an aberration like Night Cycle, where daylight invites exploration, but nighttime brings upon the horde, with vampires out to hunt you down in blistering snowstorms within the slowly melting freezing cold climate. Which too explains the red element being shown in the trailer, either light sources for you to hide in whilst vampires stalk the shadows, or searchlights alerting to your presence, a bit like the summoners of Genesis 2, rewarding a new type of stealth-like gameplay where time and patience reward survival as you nimble your way to the birthplace of the Arks, upgrading either gear to vanquish vampires or maybe evolving vampire-like abilities yourself. Which leads onto another theory, PvP. What if, with the introduction of vampires, there arrives a new infection mode that temporarily turns survivors into vampires with heightened powers, think Far Cry Predator, but at a cost of something else? We know every Bob loves to spread that welcoming leech fever disease, looking at you. Maybe, possibly, Wildcard are using that to some newfound competitive style of play we haven't seen before, at least in ARK. Either way, this is the first game expansion made entirely from the ground up in Unreal 5, with everything the developers have learned so far, and maybe, just maybe, a handful of systems they've learned from ARK 2. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, comment below, let me know, and if you agree or got your own theories, I'd love to hear. So until the next one, my name is Raasclark. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and as always, peace out.